do we think A&M can, A&M football can get this fan base back to a positive, outlook? And that's the thing, right? Because
I sure hope so.
I've been ramping this up in coverage and stuff. I did my projections, which, man, the hate those got. I mean, that was fun. I had podcasts talking about it and stuff like that. I didn't even think they were going to talk about it. And it's mainly because I picked Texas to lose to Florida and A&M, and I had to talk about why I picked for 30 minutes why I picked A&M to beat Texas. And most of it had to do with scheme. It had to do with player. It didn't have to do with hot takes, right? And then I predicted A&M to go 9-3 with, I believe, his losses to LSU, Florida, and Notre Dame. So I went a more realistic route. And again, I had to go through and talk to people why I picked that, because they're so soured on the way the season started last year with the loss to Notre Dame, and then they got hot. You have 7-1, like Robert said. You finished 1-4, and you look pretty bad in a lot of those games outside of the Auburn game, where I think was actually Marcel Reed's best game, and he actually that game was one of the reasons why I'm high on him improving, because if he can do that with a very subpar wide receiver rotation, then I think he can do that with a much better one and a much faster one and a wide receiver corps that he can actually separate in coverage. But yeah, I mean, that's really the question, is that, I think football is the only hope right now because of the changes that could be making with baseball. And basketball, I mean, we're getting to that because there's stuff going on with Mackenzie Makambo, where he's at the NBA Combine. He's performing very well. He has until the 28th, so 8 days away, to make his decision if he wants to stay in or play for A&M next year. And if he's not on the team, then I think, A&M is going to be a very competitive team, but we don't know if they're going to make the NCAA tournament or not. If he is on the team, I think they have a pretty good shot at making the NCAA tournament. But again, you guys know, I know, football number 1, baseball number 2, basketball, and then everything else. So,
I will throw in there, I don't know if y'all saw, I think it was Joe Lenardi had his first way too early 26 projection.
He's funny.
Guess who the first team out was?
Pretty good. It's pretty good bit from him.
He had Chris McDermott, the hero of A&M basketball.
Hey, I appreciate the dedication to finding our lone, current player. You could have a photo of them in A&M uniform. That's professional.
It's gonna be that guy.
No, but I feel like for football though, it is. I feel like it's the first time I can remember where, I feel like the national media may actually be higher on A&M than the fans are.
Yeah, because I sent that.
There's some of that.
I sent you the. It was Jake Wimberly, who he did his record predictions. I can get that up, Will. His were very interesting. Actually, Garner writing an article about it because, I really wanted the insight of why he picked these outside of Texas going 12-0, and then LSU going 10-2, and you've got so it's up there. You've got records there that the big surprise was Alabama, Ole Miss, Florida makes perfect sense. South Carolina, I think that's kind of their floor, and then. Actually, he was on point with me. I think I picked Missouri to go 6-6. I've seen people think they're going to win 9 to 10 games, and then you get kind of the bottom feeders. But 10-2 is, like you just said, there is national media out there, and Wimberly, he's not some fraud. He's not some guy who just does hot takes for a living. He's actually looking at the games and looking at the rosters and putting them together and going, okay, based on what each player has at star level, especially quarterback and defense. And O-line and, all the positions that matter the most for you to win in the SEC, he sees A&M going 10-2. And I think it's the reasons we talked about, and the reason I've been talking about all offseason is if you have a quarterback that can hit his intermediate routes, hit the deep ball once in a while, and you have a very good run game, which we believe they're going to have, and you have an O-line that can run block at an elite level and pass protect at an above average level, and you get a defense that's not going to kill you, then you have a chance to win 10 games, especially in the SEC, especially on the road.
Yeah, I think it's I think 10-2 is well within the range of outcomes. I think it's within reality. And it may not be I hate when they do this. I think I've seen our win total at eight games even.
7
I
and
wish
a
he
half.
just
I think it was 7.5, which a lot.
7.5. Okay,
Yeah.
I've seen some of both. I like it better being a half game. I hate trying to like pick 9 or 7. Like I'm not a fan of that. But it's a very interesting schedule. There's a lot of hype around LSU, and with that game being played where it is, until I see otherwise, I've kind of got to lean LSU beating us when they play us in Baton Rouge. I think this could very well be the year that changes. They lost. I've got everyone's draft picks over here on our schedule. They had 7 guys drafted off a team that wasn't that great. 4 offensive linemen got drafted.
Bookends,
with,
which is a big deal. Bookends.
Yeah. I mean, the top guy Campbell, he went 4th overall, so huge loss.
Yeah.
They brought in some guys, transfer guys. That's fine and dandy. They're not going to be improved at offensive line, in my opinion. They also lose Braden Swinson, defensive end, Savion Jones, and then Mason Taylor, the tight end. I like Garrett Nussmeier a lot. I really do. I think he gets way too much. He gets way too much crap on the internet for he's a really good quarterback. I know he's not that athletic. He does turn the ball over, especially when he plays A&M. But he's a really good quarterback. He's got a lot of really good weapons. Their defense could be okay, but I think it's a very gettable team on the road. Notre Dame and Texas, both very, very good teams on the road. Those could be challenging. I think I think the 2 I have circled, getting them at home is a big deal. That's Auburn and Florida. Both getting a lot of hype in the offseason, rightfully so. I mean, Auburn has an outstanding receiver room. If they get things figured out at quarterback with Jackson Arnold, who has some ability, just based, going off of his pedigree. Like Hugh Freeze is an offensive guy. He will figure it out at some point. The receivers are ridiculous. Offensive line, pretty good. Defense, I don't really know. We'll see. But
that's the thing. I think with Auburn, I've heard different things. I haven't studied them enough, and I think they have a good defense. I think they have a good enough defense, but I've heard they have an elite defense from some people. I'm thinking, I don't know where people are getting that. That's the thing. I think defense is going to be a big part of this, and I think when you look at the 3 or the 4 teams, they all bring back a lot of veteran talent defensively. I think LSU is going to be fine. I think A&M obviously is going to be better in a lot of areas. Georgia and Texas, that's really their strengths, especially Texas with Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill. But to go on your point, it's like A&M, it's going to be about momentum, and it's going to be about getting early road wins. So if you can get that Notre Dame win, which would be massive, because what that would do to the locker room based on we can go down there where barely anybody, except for Northern Illinois, they can beat them there. But where barely anybody can beat, an historic team and historic stadium when, everything's going to be against you because you get 2 layup games versus I think UTSA is the first one, and then they play Utah State. So you do get those layup games to start, which is going to help Marcel Reed. But if you can get that win and then you go into SEC play, I think Auburn's the first game on the schedule, and you can really get on a nice road and path towards, like you said, 9 or 10 wins, because we saw that last year with them when they went 7-1, because they had developed the identity with Le'Veon Moss in the backfield. Marcel Reed was managing the game well enough. Obviously, the whole drama with Connor Wegman coming back and all that, that's gone now, so you don't have to deal with that anymore. And the defense didn't kill you until it did in the back end. So I think it makes sense, but obviously you guys can finish out what you think is really based on reality here.
Yeah, I think, the frustrating thing is this should be a season where A&M fans should, I think, have a lot of optimism, because it's year 2 of Mike Elko, when you're bringing back your starting quarterback, your entire offensive line, all of your starting running backs. You think what should be a improved wide receiver core. You do lose some players on defense, but I think there's hope that with the guys you do return, with some of the portal additions, and then with some of the coaching moves that we've discussed earlier, Like, there's reasons to expect, I think, defensive improvement too. So like, there's all kinds of talking points that you can bring up and say this team should be better than they were a year ago. This team, like you said, could easily win 10 games if things click and if things go right. But I think from the fan base perspective, I'm going to reference the now infamous Billy Lucci tweet where he talked about, you know, first comes the commitment, then comes the championships. When it was about Jimbo and Schloss and Buzz. And I don't do that to throw Billy under the bus by any means, but I think it's just a larger symptom of this fan base is tired of
expectations.
They're tired of not living up to expectations. They're tired of being proven wrong. They're tired of being the butt of the joke. And is that fair to Mike Elko and to this football team? I don't think it really is, because they really, have not played a very significant part in a lot of what's led to that mindset. But I think from the fans' perspective, people are just, they obviously hungry for a winner, like nobody's business. But I think a lot of folks aren't going to believe it until they see it, unfortunately. And that's a crummy place to be, because it's pessimism, it's glass half empty, and no one wants to be that way. But I feel like for a lot of A&M fans, that's kind of a well-earned mindset at this point, unfortunately. But we're still sitting here in May. We've all got 3+ months to convince ourselves otherwise, and walk into week 1 thinking this is the year we're gonna go undefeated and win the Natty.
And that's the thing. Like I'm riding the fence a little bit. I feel like I'm in between a rock and a hard place, because I've been fooled 32 seasons in a row.
Yeah.
Well, I guess with the exception of 2012.
2012. And 2020.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, sure. But the last 5 in a row have not been great. And those A&M teams have been plenty talented to get things done. But I really like the makeup of this football team. I like how they attack the receiver position. I think I like how they attacked, bringing in a guy to run the back end of the defense. I think with getting a guy like Tyreek Chappelle back, hopefully healthy, adding Jordan Shaw, I think and Julian Humphrey. I think Des Ricks, we're all going to have that bowl game stuck in our heads till we see it differently. But just a young kid with a ton of talent, super high upside. I think the offensive line is in a good spot. Defensive line, edge rushers were really impressive in the spring. I think D tackle is in a better spot than I probably gave it credit for a few months ago. So there's really no glaring weakness. I guess the glaring weakness is, hey, can Colin Klein get these pieces to work for his offense against these defenses? Because there's some pretty solid defenses, especially with Notre Dame and Texas. Obviously, those aren't must-win games. There's probably 2 toughest teams on your schedule. But and if you lose against Notre Dame on the road, that's not a death knell. Yeah. It's gonna suck, but it's not a death knell for your season. But man, like you said, you go in there and you win that game. You start 3-0 with a win over the national runner-up from a season ago. That's going to give you crazy momentum and put you in a really good spot the rest of the year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think Colin Klein is on the chopping block, and obviously the fans' minds is that, are we finally going to see improvement? Because you were brought in to have a very complex scheme that the players can understand. So it's not a Jimbo area where these players didn't even know what he was doing. I mean, half the time they couldn't run it. But similar to what he did with Kansas State, obviously strong run game, having a quarterback that can run when needed. He has both those things. So, and you need a very quick, fast wide receiver core that is going to separate at a high level, that can give you that downfield deep pass, that ability to make big plays. And again, it's going to be, can Marcel recontrol this offense? Can he do what's asked? Because I don't think the scheme is an issue. I think, one of the reasons why fans hate Colin Klein in a way, and they base it off of last season, you got to give the guy a little bit of time, because it was his first season going from the Big 12 to the SEC. He lost his best player, who, again, Le'Veon Moss was their best player offensively at that time, and he was the bell cow. He was your identity. And when you lose that, and you have a smaller guy in Amari Daniels and no depth behind him, obviously losing Ruben Owens, who's back healthy to the beginning of the season. I can't really blame him that much. It's very hard to just throw everything on him and go, it's your fault that they couldn't score points. It's your fault that Marcel Reed, again, Marcel Reed, and I'll be spending the entire summer talking about this. He's put in the work this summer. We see it in videos. We see it when he's working with coaches in the offseason. He's in the weight room lifting as much as I do for reps, which is pretty good because I've been weightlifting my entire freaking life and he's already doing all that. So it's like,
humble brag.
Yeah, exactly. But he's doing all that. He's doing those type of things. He's doing the things that he has to do. He knows there's pressure on him. And I just hope that fans understand that this isn't, a situation where like he was just handed the job and he's just going to stroll with it and go, whatever. He knows that if he comes in and struggles and they go on like a 2-game losing streak, you've got Miles O'Neill, you've got Jacob Zeno right behind you, that if Mike Elko gets to a desperate point and says we need a change, he's going to make the change. We've already seen him do that. So we saw him do it. Exactly. We saw him do it. I'll just say this. He's not hamstrung by Marcel Reed. He's not just going to keep him in there forever if he struggles. And
yeah, Jimbo, on the other hand, we're riding or dying with whoever that quarterback is.
And that's what I'm saying, right? Because we saw for the first time, and I think all of us saw against LSU, Connor Wigman sucked. He was terrible. He just didn't have it. And I love Connor Wigman. I hope he balls out at Houston, but he didn't have it that night. And we learned later he was still injured and he just didn't. He was in a bad mindset. But he made the change when needed and ended up winning that game because of it. So I trust Elko to make the tough decisions. That's why I'm bullish on him. That's why I feel, and what Robert said was accurate as hell. I mean, honestly, like I understand a lot of the Aggie fan base not being excited. I get it because you want to see the results and you're sick of being disappointed because it sucks. It sucks to see these teams just lose in the worst ways. And that was just a year after the baseball team lost by a run in the national championship game. And it all just kind of came to head when obviously we've been talking about the entire show with baseball and softball. So it is hard to go into the summer, be super excited. I know someone will get back on the train of like when we see more of these workout videos and the team really getting into fall practice. And then when the season starts, but I think that when you go in and you play these first 2 games, you want to see A&M score a ton of points. You want to see this offense look in sync. You want to see Marcel Reed take deep shots, connect with his receivers. We want to see guys like Casey Concepcion look like that star number 1. And you want to see a healthy Le'Veon Moss. And finally, you want to see Ruben Owens, who I had Carter Carrolls on the show about a month ago. And we were talking about that. He basically said, it was during spring practice, this is his last shot to prove that he's that 5-star talent. But what's his role? Because we know what Amari Daniels can do. We obviously know what Moss can do. We know that Moss is completely healthy and that he's ready to get back to form. But what is Owens going to do for this offense? Is it going to be more of is it going to be like a 2-back set situation? Is he going to be more of a receiver? We don't know. But they got the dudes to get it done. That's why I'm positive on him. It's not just because I cover A&M and I'm trying to make him feel good. If they had a bad roster, I would talk about it. I mean, but they, like you said, well, they don't have a ton of holes. And the roster the schedule is tough, but look, this is year 2 for Mike Elko. This is year 2 for Colin Klein. There's a lot of pressure. We saw the changes he made with Bateman. Obviously, Elko's going to take a bigger role in defensive play calling, bringing Hemphill in. He's doing what he has to do because he knows there's pressure on him. And, we hope that, pressure creates diamonds, as we know. So hopefully that's the case.
Yeah, and if they had failed to address the receiver position, this in the offseason, I'd sit here and say, you know what, guys, it ain't gonna be much better because and there's some young guys like I'm a big believer in Isaiah Williams and Ashton Bethel Roman, who I think are gonna have great seasons. But going and getting a guy like Concepcion, getting a guy like Mario Craver, that room as a whole now has a very, very high ceiling. We'll see about Jerome Miles. Saw he was running track the other day.
He's running track, and he ran a very impressive.
I think a 10.7.
10.7, yeah. And I mean that. So, and if you can, I know this from guys who have had knee issues and stuff like that. If you can run like that, you're going to be fine during the 25 season. He's another guy who can take the top off the defense, like you said.
Yeah, I was bummed that he was the one guy from the whole class that wasn't here in the spring, but obviously rehab seems to be going very well for him.
Yeah.
I will say, and then we can get out of here. You guys may have talked about this after the spring game. I hate drafting the teams for the spring game. I think it sucks. It's a stupid idea. I love drafting. I'll draft anything with you, but I hate putting this in a format for the fans of not seeing what we really not seeing what we have. Like Marcel Reed was under pressure the second he got the football every single snap, and you see people make these big judgments and proclamations like, "Oh my gosh, Reed sucks. Like he can't throw." I mean, and I'll say this and not to make to say these are the same player or either one is good or bad, but I watched Notre Dame spring game because I've seen clips of CJ Carr just dropping some dimes, stuff like that. Yeah. And wouldn't you know it, he's standing in a clean pocket. He gets pressured one time, the ball goes in the dirt. So I'm just saying, anyone can look good when things are going good around you, but and Marcel's a guy who can make things happen with his legs and obviously extend plays. So I think with the actual starting O-line, I think center, sneaky good upgrade, getting Naboo back over Coley. And obviously having a healthy Chase Basantis for a whole season would go a long way. But yeah, just overall very bullish on the team, but just kind of keeping it to myself for the most part and not getting out over my skis. So
it's interesting. It's interesting coverage, and it's kind of funny because in the A&M journalism aspect, and obviously you guys know that it's we all kind of have similar tones sometimes. We all kind of cover the team. You guys do it a little more humorous and better, in my opinion, but it's not as boring. But it's going to be very interesting come summer when obviously all the recruiting focus and stuff like that comes, and we finally get closer and closer, and it gets real now, and you really start evaluating everything. And I think we've laid it out. And I think two of the players you mentioned, Isaiah Williams and Ashton Bethel-Roman, Ken Torres, who's been on the show last couple times, kind of a rising recruiting guy. He was at the game, and we were talking about that. And I was like, well, who really stood out? And like what you just said, Will, obviously, when you do pick the teams, it's like the O-line is just so bad. And I felt bad for Reed because he's just trying to have one clean pocket. But even without, he made some great throws, and he found Casey Concepcion like 3 or 4 times. And I remember I was asking about that. He said, "Does he looks like the number one option, right?" He said, "Yeah." He said Casey, he was getting open every time against Will Lee and some of the better corners, and he's just finding those gaps, and that's going to make Reed's job so much easier because other guys are going to get open. The biggest thing, like with Mario Craver, he already shown he can beat guys deep. Like that's what his skill set is. Mike Elko was talking about how he killed us against Mississippi State, and he's a young talent. So he's got a ways to go. But Isaiah Williams and Ashton Bethel-Roman, I was just going to say, they're excellent route runners. You didn't have that last year. You had guys that did not run crisp routes, and that's one of the reasons they couldn't separate. So now you have that, and you have options. That's the biggest change in my opinion.
Well, they showed it in that game that they can make plays while the ball's in the air and help the quarterback out when the ball's not perfect. I feel like we haven't really had that since Josh Reynolds and Christian Kirk. I mean, these are real deal receivers who can, even if Reed doesn't put the ball, just perfectly, like a couple of these guys, you just get it close to them and they can go up and make a play for you.
Yeah, playmakers. What a thought.
I would love to see it. Been a long time.
No, I mean honestly, those first 2 games, I just want to see them score a lot. And score in a variety of ways, and that's what's really going to pump people up. Like, okay, maybe there is some change, because if you're beating Utah State 20-14, there's going to be problems, right? There's going to be big problems, and you're going to go to Notre Dame, and I think a lot of fan base are going to be like, okay, I don't know about this. You beat the crap out of those 2 teams. You go with a little momentum. You actually look like the team we are going to be talking about relentlessly. I think it's going to start to change a little bit. I just think. That's my last point. I'll let you guys finish. But I agree that I don't think it's fair for Mike Elko. I don't think he cares. I think he's got a job to do. Fans are going to say what they want. But I do believe that he understands how important it is to improve and finally win 9 games, get a playoff berth, break that curse, and get A&M on the right track, because earning a playoff berth this season would be huge for this program, and it would act as not just recruiting momentum, but it would be actual progress, because we haven't made actual progress. Going 7-1, that's not progress. That's just nice, right? It's nice to go back and look at that, and then it all went downhill. But doing that is going to be a huge catapult into year 3, where obviously recruiting is already great. He's already shown he can get players in the transfer portal. He's already checked enough boxes. It's just finally doing it on the field, getting it done in year. Because I think year 2 for any coach, outside of Sarkisian, I think he was terrible in year 2, and then what was it, like year 3 or 4 when it turned around? So Elko's going to get a lot of criticism where Sarkisian didn't get as much, but we know why that is.
But yeah, I think the good news, just from the fan perspective, is I think you don't have an apathetic fan base. I think you have an angry fan base.
Bingo.
And while that's not necessarily ideal, I think it's also one that can turn around very, very quickly. Like you said, I think you win that Notre Dame game, and then say you close out September by beating Auburn. I think you get a whole lot of people back on the train really, really quickly. And it's like, so to the point of, from Mike Elko's perspective, I agree that it doesn't matter because, his job is to win games no matter what the fans think. But even more importantly, if he does do his job, the fan perception takes care of itself.
Yeah, I think the last part I'll add onto that, because that gave me a good thought. I don't think any of us are have our names on any buildings. Like, we're not any any big money donors to the program. But you saw, like, in a year we didn't make the playoff or make like win a championship with the Johnny Manziel year. And an obscene amount of money just flowed into the program. Like Robert said, we're not apathetic. We're angry because we know what things can be here and what the potential is. And you go out and show you're going in the right direction, and shoot, if you make the playoff, in year 2, and do some damage that way, I think even with the outstanding financial obligations that we currently have, I think you see a lot of support pour into the program in a big way. So obviously we'd all love to see it. I'm bullish, but yeah, I'm going to believe it when I see it.
Yeah, realistic. That's really what it is now. You're right.
If we have a great season this year, then we can just all say that Learfield Sports was the problem the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just,
play fly.
Yeah. Because look, Mike Elko isn't going anywhere. I'm not having that conversation. We can talk about it early. We can talk about everybody else. It's just, you guys pretty nailed it. You pretty much nailed it. It's just a weird time to be an Aggie fan, to be an alumni, to cover this team. But again, there's hope ahead. And look, everybody, if you love football, you're going to watch the season. That's how I see it. You're going to watch the season no matter what. You can be as angry as possible, but you're going to get excited at the end of August when they finally kick off in Kyle Field. It's going to happen. And it's like, look, our job here is just tell you what's going on, sometimes give opinion, but I just don't ever get that low because I've seen other programs have these similar type of just low points in their athletic programs. Not like this recently. It's just been pretty crazy. But look, they usually get out of it. It doesn't have to. But the biggest thing is the financial part of it is not a problem. That's why the anger persists, right? Because they know we can be much better than we are. It's not because we're lagging in those areas.